So it'll be interesting to see what exactly Fate of the Old Republic turns out to be. And we can look at the trailer and see if the evidence supports some of my immediate kind of knee jerk reactions. Um, I think there was some reporting about, the KOTOR 1 remake over the years here and there, where obviously they had a new team of writers working on it. Um, and, it wouldn't have been a one to one, replica of the original Knights of the Old Republic because, well, why would you do that, first of all? And second of all, I think there was some discussion of, bringing it more in line with sort of the new Disney era Star Wars canon, um, which is interesting. And whether or not this Fate of the Old Republic thing is canon is really probably just um, philosophical and doesn't really matter. It's purely like something for fans to argue about. But um, I do think that, the sort of new era of Star Wars has famously curated and been selective about what parts of the old sort of Legends continuity, the so-called expanded universe, as the George era called it. Um, they've sort of cherry picked what they bring in. Yeah, exactly. Like, how's it going, dude? They bring in things like Thrawn, and they bring in, hints of what's Dash Rendar and all these like little Sith nods, with uh, there was like Revan was named in the Rise of Skywalker visual dictionary, and like um, I think you can see like Darth Nihilus's mask, maybe even in Rise of Skywalker. I mean, there's like all these like little things. There's Malachor is in Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, the animated series, famously, and there's sort of this dark feminine presence, like a disembodied voice on Malachor, which of course the fans are like, oh, that's Filoni putting Kreia into canon, Darth Treya, um, which I tend to think is probably exactly what that is. What else? But the point is I think that with something like a title like Fate of the Old Republic, and then you take the implications of the fact that Revan was sort of imprisoned in sort of stasis and tortured for like 200 or 300 years or something in like a Sith prison dungeon thing, right? Um, in the Old Republic MMO, and then in the Revan novel by Drew Karpyshyn, which is basically the prequel that bridges KOTOR 1 and 2 to the MMO. Um, I'm inclined to think that this new game will kind of take a pluralistic, agnostic kind of view toward the first two games and disregard the MMO, and also care about the canon as it exists today, while also doing what every other Star Wars product has done in the last however many years it's been now. Gosh, what, 13, 14 years? Be aware and studied on the Legends continuity, because we've still got people like Leland Shee and, the whole story group and that holocron. Lucasfilm is not ignorant of the expanded universe. They're just, they don't want to have everything be, Shizor and Mara Jade forever and ever ad nauseum, because that would be very boring. You know, but then they're like, why would we throw away Grand Admiral Thrawn? He's one of the great Star Wars villains. And why would we throw away, the Old Republic sub franchise, if you want to, whatever you want to call it? For some people, probably myself included, you might be able to see the Bastila behind me. Most expensive toy I've ever bought in my life, I believe, that Bastila. The Old Republic is kind of the sacred text for a lot of us, right? And so to me, I think it's going to be this weird sort of, and I say weird in a good way. Weird is not a negative. By the way, Yagi one, thank you for the Prime sub. That was like when I was not online. That was when we weren't live, but thank you for that. The follow and the Prime sub, hell yeah. Um, but yeah, I think what they'll do is they'll make it so that canon people look at this new Fate of the Old Republic game and say, "Oh, that's the Star Wars canon I know in the Disney era." They'll make it so that expanded universe players will play it and be like, "Oh, there's HK-47. There's the Leviathan warship that I remember from the first KOTOR game that where I fought Darth Malak for the first time." And then I think Casey's a smart guy, and like James Olin was, they understand exactly what the sort of fantasy of KOTOR 1 was. They know people want to be girl Revan. They want to be the character who romanced Bastila, or the character who romanced Karth, or the character who didn't romance either, or the character who loves Juhani, but maybe it's maybe it's unrequited love with Juhani, or maybe they had a thing for Jolie Bindo, or whatever the case may be. And the Old Republic MMO and the novel, certainly the novel that led into the MMO, it had to kind of say, here's this Revan, which fans have taken and made into this abomination of like, Revan looked like Keanu Reeves, and he was like this exact singular character, and he like split into two beings in this weird thing that happened in the MMO Shadow of Revan expansion, and that's the story of Revan, and he had all these cult like followers. And um if I had to guess, having talked to Casey Hudson a couple times and having talked to a lot of people who worked on the Old Republic games, I would suspect that this new game will totally ignore the quote unquote canon Revan of the expanded universe, which is no longer canon anyway. There's no real incentive for them to like build on a story that they have declared, you know, legends, right? But they still make content for the MMO, but this is like clearly they're calling it a spiritual successor to Knights of the Old Republic, um, which is great phrasing. And yet it looks really fresh. It looks new. I had heard a rumor earlier tonight from someone I trusted that KOTOR 3 might be announced tonight. And I was like, holy shit, like that sounds crazy, but I could see it happening. And then even when it started, the moment the teaser trailer started, I knew exactly what I was looking at. I was like, oh, there's a flight stick. Oh, there's a spaceship, sort of a lone spaceship crossing the stars, all alone against the black. I was like, I know exactly what this is. This is KOTOR 3. Holy shit. Having thought about it for more than 2 seconds, I think it's not quite KOTOR 3. I think it's something a little more complex than that. Um, and if you listen to any of the sort of fan discussion around Mass Effect 5, I think that you kind of have gotten a taste of this sort of really weird fine line that these narrative designers have to walk when they're creating something that is a sequel to a game that let players role play and be whatever their character they wanted, male, female, make whatever choices they want, good, bad. Um, two possible endings, and then you have KOTOR 2, which has all these different branching variables. It has like a built-in history of Revan in it, but like even the player in KOTOR 2 gets to say, what are you talking about? Revan was a woman, or I heard this other thing happened, and like that becomes part of KOTOR 2's branching narrative. I think Lucasfilm Games and people like Casey Hudson, and surely all the talented people working with Casey Hudson, um, I think they're very aware that people are protective of their unique Revan, and they'll want to preserve that experience in this new spiritual successor, right? So that's what I think Fate of the Old Republic is going to be. And I do not think you're going to be playing as Revan or Bastila. If I had to guess, gut feeling based on my first reaction to the teaser trailer, I think you're probably playing as the child of Revan and Bastila that is mentioned in the Revan novel. So again, that is the one direct Old Republic, KOTOR and Revan tie-in book that they ever released. Obviously, there's the Darth Bane trilogy that's very KOTOR flavored, and it's by one of the KOTOR writers, Drew Karpyshyn. And I kind of feel like Path of Destruction is like the most KOTOR-esque book of them all, even though there's a Revan novel, ironically. But and then of course there's the Old Republic MMO tie-in novels, but those are about like other characters and the descendants of Bastila and Revan. So yeah, I think this is going to be a thing of like, with The Force Awakens, a lot of people thought maybe like Rey was Luke's kid. I think this could be that because it makes sense. You see yeah, further down. Well, it could be either thing. It could be a descendant, it could be a totally new character. Personally, I think it's like Bastila and Revan's child who you can have be male, female, maybe even non-binary, like whatever. So an original character, maybe they don't know their father was Darth Revan. Maybe they don't know their mother was Bastila Shan. You know, the whole point of KOTOR 2, okay, so like let's say hypothetically, this Fate of the Old Republic game considers the modern Star Wars canon to be canon, the first KOTOR game and the second KOTOR game, and that's it. And then, maybe picks piecemeal from stuff like Drew's Revan novel. You could really have the child of Bastila and Revan be any character you want. And I don't know, there's probably a good reason why we see the Leviathan in the teaser, and why it's called Fate of the Old Republic. Back in the day, I used to daydream about like, okay, if I was ever in a room to pitch, how do you bring Knights of the Old Republic into canon? My elevator pitch was always Bastila is the protagonist. It is Apocalypse Now, and Darth Revan is Colonel Kurtz in terms of like very mysterious lost figure out on the fringes of this horrible war between Jedi, Sith, and then the Mandalorian sort of collateral. And Fate of the Republic, it sounds like there's a mystery to unravel, so anyway, let's look at this trailer. I have watched this only once, but yeah, let's watch it and then discuss it, and hopefully it won't be loud as hell. Hopefully my internet doesn't fail me either. But yeah, as soon as I saw this, I was like, oh, this is the KOTOR 3 thing. And then that kind of confirmed it, that glove. I was surprised that wasn't the Ebon Hawk. And that made me think, child of Revan. This music is beautiful. The character looks Bastila-esque, but does not look like Bastila to me. However, that looks like an HK assassin droid. Maybe not 47, but like an HK type droid. I don't know. Sure looks like 47. That is an incredible shot. Very alien. Ooh, that looks awesome. The gloves could be Bastila. I don't know. The face is like the one thing that makes me think Bastila. But yeah, I don't think that you'll play as Bastila or Revan. I think it'll be like, you know, I think it is as close to KOTOR 3 as we're going to ever get. And I think that it's going to, they're going to have to do the fantasy that people want, right? Which is it had been 3 months since I'd used that in a title. Yeah, when was the last time they used Fate in something? I'm trying to think. I mean, there was like Fate of the Jedi. It was like a big series back in the day, like a 10 book series or something. Um, what the figure is in the Leviathan? Did I miss one? Did I miss something? Let's see. Okay, so that, I mean, that's the whole purpose of this, is like, let's dissect this a little bit. So you say figure. Oh, opposite of. Are you saying up here? Oh, that. Is that a monster? Now, see, I was totally looking at her, so I kind of like, um, that might be like, what are they, like Tech or whatever? The Tech was like the big, man, they don't really give you much there, do they? It could be one of those droids. Like, there's all kinds of droids in KOTOR, but that it looks organic to me. It could be a, I don't know. I think that's some kind of monster, but yeah, like either the anti-force lizard things or the Techs are like these big beasts that, like, I don't know if they feed off the force, but they were from the expanded universe. There's what it, the thing you're talking about. I think it's called like the Salamari or something. I don't know. There's like a few things now that like feed off the force or turn the force off or do, fuck around with the force. Um, but yeah, it definitely looks like an organic monster to me. Um, but yeah, I think that could be Bastila there, and maybe they're thinking that they probably want you to think something simplistic like this is Bastila looking for Revan, because sort of the narrative, other than like the stuff that tied directly into the MMO, it was like Revan went. He sensed the presence of the Sith Empire and the Emperor who like lived and lived for thousands of years or hundreds of years or whatever. And so he went in search of that. And Bastila, I think canonically it's like Bastila and their child never saw him again. So like, one of the compelling mysteries here could be what happened to Revan, and I kind of always think that's like a good question anyway, because that was sort of built into my stupid, like, oh, it should be Apocalypse Now and Bastila is, searching for Revan as like the Colonel Kurtz figure, so because Revan can be anything, he's inherently mysterious and kind of unknowable because he's player defined and not authored in the way of a traditional character. He's a vehicle for the narrative fantasy. Um, the T in code, yeah, the Tech were actually in KOTOR. You like fought them, I want to say on Kashyyyk and Corbin at least. I don't think you fought them anywhere else off the top of my head. Um, I should be the guy who knows this definitively, but I remember fighting one on Kashyyyk, and then I think maybe you fight like two or four in Corbin in the underground temples, like the Sith tombs, something like that. So you only fight like half a dozen of them in the game at most or something. But yeah, those are like the giant. I'm trying to think what they look like. I mean, they don't exactly look like a Rancor. They're sort of like more like a dewback or whatever, like like a lizard with like spiny like armor, like I don't know, black spikes coming off of its reptile skin, and then yeah, I think it literally they feed off the force or something. I don't know. I'm really rusty. I haven't played the first one in a while. I've only really played KOTOR 2 recently I mean, I've played like little bits of KOTOR 1 recently, but um because I spent like a few years of my life playing KOTOR 1 and writing about it and interviewing people about it, it literally I just kind of like am only super into the second one at the moment, like for to play for fun and leisure, you know. It's weird. So um but yeah, I mean KOTOR 1 I played so many times as like a teenager and stuff that yeah, that one is just permanently burned into my memory anyway. So um it's like the mystery is a little bit gone for me, but maybe, that's why remakes, as much as I don't want like a KOTOR without turn-based combat and they're going to change everything, like just the idea of having like newness to the original KOTOR again, um, which is like doubly true of this Fate of the Old Republic thing. It's like, oh, we get like new KOTOR, sort of, whatever it ends up being. But yeah, a lot of the reporting and rumors around the original KOTOR remake were always about like, um, sort of how do we adapt this for the modern sort of Disney canon audience and bring it up to like not just the standard of quality, but I think basically make it fit within the canon neatly and not have it like bump into anything, too sharply. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's there's a lot of different places they could go with it. I think that the most interesting thing is like Revan and Bastila have this child who has grown up, and what happened to my father, that kind of thing. And I mean, Bastila could be sort of your master. I mean, there's so many things they could do with it. Um, they could pull in characters from the second game, like Atris or something. Yeah, I mean, they definitely focus on mostly around the Civil War and the Clone Wars. I mean, you're not wrong there. And they really, ironically, with George, like the dark times were like very off limits for a long time, I think. The period between like episodes 3 and 4. And so under Disney and like Dave Filoni's stuff, like they've like really been obsessed with that period. Um, Maybe as a reaction to that, like, oh, they couldn't tell stories about, that period where Obi-Wan was in hiding and stuff for decades and decades. Excuse me. And so, yeah, I don't know. But I like that stuff. I like Jedi Survivor and Andor and stuff. So, it works out that they're heavily mining that now, but um yeah, and then the High Republic, I mean that's like way after the Old Republic, so that doesn't bump into 35%. Yeah, like Revan disappeared because he had a vision of Order 66 and he went to go prevent it. He's like, this Palpatine guy is already hanging out. I'm gonna go take care of him. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's like so much story in the Old Republic MMO. It's like this huge sprawling epic that they've been working on for what, 15 years, 14 years, something crazy like that. But like, um, I think it'll ignore the MMO or maybe take a couple nods from it in terms of like, oh, where are things eventually headed? And I think it's like 300 years after KOTOR 2 or something. So I haven't been talking today, so my throat's betraying me. But um, I don't know. I think that it's gonna be a new game, a new story. Obviously, we saw the wreckage of the Leviathan, so you know that it cares about the fate of Darth Revan and maybe Bastila too. Um, some of those really key characters from the classic KOTOR games. it's going to care about what happened to them, and we'll get some kind of answers about that. But they're going to want to create. Hudson always described the fantasy of KOTOR 1 to me. Like Olin always talked about, like, oh, we want to make you feel like you're Luke Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy, and you're telling your own version of that story, blank slate, D&D style. Casey Hudson always described it as you can go anywhere and do anything you want because you've got your spaceship and you are, a player with agency and freedom, and you're going to make these choices. And, um, you know, the galaxy is your oyster, that kind of thing.